Good afternoon. This is Oscar Sampo reporting to you live from the Brick Arts Media podcasting studio in downtown Brooklyn. It's a pleasure to have you today, and indeed, there is so much to discuss. The controversy surrounding iconic superstar Barbara Streisand is a controversy that, in a lot of ways, I don't personally think is justified. Many people have criticized her in regards to some of the comments that she made regarding the victims of Michael Jackson's in relationship to his documentary, Never Leaving Neverland. Leaving Neverland, perhaps. That's what I would call it, Never Leaving Neverland. It is what it is in so many capacities. Leaving Neverland, nonetheless, has created a great deal of controversy, and it certainly is something that I have very strong opinions about. Barbara Streisand, I think, is a very empathetic person. She's very open-minded. She did say that she was empathetic not only for the Michael Jackson's victims, but she was even empathetic regarding him. The victims, as we presently speak, are ages 36 and 40, Mr. Robson and Mr. Safechuck. Streisand was taken out of context in some degrees, not in terms of what she said literally, but in terms of how she was conveying what she had to say. It was stated that what happened to them when they were younger, what transpired between themselves and Michael Jackson didn't kill them. What she said was not a reflection of not having regard for them. What she was stating was they were young men. They were 7 or 8 years of age at the time that it actually happened. They are now young men, well in their 30s. They're married. They have children. Not that there's a lack of regard, but psychologically they were not castrated by what happened. They are socially intact in such a way that they could move out into the world. They could meet a woman. They could union with her, and they could procreate. But it did not, by any stretch of the imagination, state a lack of understanding for a young person. Needless to say, the mind of a child is like a sponge. You have to be careful what you say and do in front of children, and you have to be careful how you say and what you do in front of them, because depending on what it is that is done, whether it is positive or negative, whether it's a conscious expression or whether it's something that's subliminal, what we are exposed to in the formative years of our lives at some point in time is going to manifest. And depending on how it's processed, if it was not something that was positive, the manner in which it is going to be released into the atmosphere around the individual themselves and the external world is not going to be attractive. I look at Michael Jackson's evolution. I had the fortune in 1988 to see him when he was at the Brendan Byrne Arena in the Garden State, the Bad Tour, as it was entitled. It was absolutely incredible. I sat there looking at this performance, and I came to realize that when you look at Michael Jackson live, what you see is only a 5 to 10% glimpse into who and what he was, not only as a person, but an artistic phenomenon. When you're sitting there and watching the videos, what actually happened while he was on stage was death-defying, and it was incredibly magnetic. I paid a scalper on the bus $50 for my ticket. The woman sitting next to me paid $300 for hers, and we both agreed that it was absolutely worth the price of admission. Michael Jackson was a young man who in many ways was deprived of a childhood. His life was a spectacular life, and it was a very, very sad life. I feel that in relationship to the statements that Ms. Streisand made, a lot of the response that she got from the public and even people that are in the world of media itself directly, she got not because the criticism was justified, but unfortunately we are passing through a time socially and spiritually where there is a vast pocket of misdirected negative energy, and the art and science of scapegoating is doing very well. If I can point my finger at you long and hard enough, it just might put me in a zone where I don't have to deal with what's wrong with me. And whether you're on Capitol Hill, whether you're walking on Fulton Street in downtown Brooklyn, New York City, or whether you're sitting at home watching The View, there seems to be this very fervent climate of not having to take responsibility for oneself. And if I can project onto you what's wrong with me, my life is going to be stellar. And now it's all about your destruction for the betterment of mankind. We are fortunate in so many ways to have the opportunity to access what people think, such as Ms. Streisand, through media venues. And at the same time, there is a misfortune and there is a handicap that people bestow upon themselves, because quite often what we read in tabloid venues, it's almost like reading scripture. You don't take things apart, you don't disassemble them, you don't reconfigure, you just automatically assume that because it was written by somebody, perhaps somebody that has a degree in journalism from a renowned university, therefore this is the word of creation. It's just not so in life. It's very important that you be able to step back, analyze things, and have an opinion of your own. The media's primary job is to generate revenue for the publication that they work for. That is their first responsibility. Sensationalism, needless to say, is going to be a very substantial component in that process. And as a result of that, people need to step back and they need to separate the lines. They need to allow themselves to understand the degrees of variation that might be presented in something that somebody writes. And from there, they draw their own conclusions. I love Barbara Streisand. I'm not opinionated. My views are not jaundiced. I think that she's a very strong person, and I think that she was very objective and on point with what she had to say. In essence, what she was also stating was, wait a minute, this is something that happened more than a quarter of a century ago. They're now young men. Perhaps this is their opportunity to be a part of the proverbial 15 minutes of fame. Or maybe it was not. But what was important to understand and to differentiate from anything other than what it was is the fact that Streisand took the time to do that. And I think that instead of being criticized, that's something that is deeply worthy of respect and commendation. I would like to take a moment to pause, and I will speak with you shortly.